Marie Curie is probably the most well-known female scientist in history. Born in Poland, she migrated to France at the age of 23 because women were not allowed to study at the universities in Poland at that time. In France, she completed her studies and married Pierre Curie. Together, they did groundbreaking work in radiation and radioactivity that would become the foundation for many modern technologies. The work led to Marie becoming the first woman to win the Nobel Prize and the only woman to win two Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry and the other in physics. Emmy Noether was born in Germany and also endured gender discrimination as a mathematician in the early 1900s. Despite legal obstacles, she was able to force her way into several universities as a professor. She accomplished this because she was so good at math that many famous male scientists recommended her, and some universities even forged documents so she could teach. For all of her many contributions to the field of mathematics, she is most remembered for her body of work, which caused a paradigm shift in science toward favoring the simplest explanations for natural phenomena. Rosalind Franklin was an English chemist who became famous for identifying the molecular structures of many common materials. But her most important contribution was the development of a method for viewing the structure of DNA. While Watson and Crick received most of the credit for the discovery of DNA, they have since admitted that much of their work was only an extension of the discoveries made by Rosalind Franklin. Katherine Johnson is an American physicist, space scientist, and mathematician. She worked in NASA and was responsible for all of the trajectory calculations of the early space flights. It was a time before computers and calculators, and one small calculating error would have cost hundreds of millions of dollars and the lives of the astronauts. But she made no errors. In fact, when NASA began using digital computers, she was responsible for checking to make sure that the computer didn't make a mistake. Caroline Herschel was born in Germany and suffered a childhood disease that stunted her growth. She never passed 4'3". Because of this, she became the Cinderella of her family, a house servant with no prospect of marriage. But as fortune would have it, her brother was an astronomer in England, and he invited her to come live with him. There she assisted her brother William until he retired from astronomy, at which point she took over his work. Under her leadership, her team of astronomers discovered over 100 new galaxies and ushered in the beginning of modern astronomy. Michael Faraday grew up in a poor family in England. He worked as a bookbinding apprentice, where he was given the opportunity to work at the Royal Institute as a lab assistant. While working, in his free time, he made one of the most important discoveries in the physical sciences. The phenomena electricity and magnetism had been well known but poorly understood. Faraday showed that electricity and magnetism were really the same, the electromagnetic force. All electronic inventions have been based on this discovery. Max Planck was a German theoretical physicist who was employed to answer one simple question. Light bulb manufacturers wanted to know the most efficient temperature for the light bulb filament to burn. But nobody could answer the question because the classical theory of energy implied that a metal should become invisible when heated to a sufficient temperature. This was obviously wrong. For more than 10 years, he and other scientists struggled to find an answer, until one day he decided to work the problem backward. In 1900, he proposed that energy was actually being released in individual packets called quanta. Experiments confirmed his hypothesis, and the field of quantum mechanics was born. Richard Feynman was an American physicist who was recruited to work on the Manhattan Project while still a graduate student. After being recognized for his contributions to the project, He went on to win the Nobel Prize for his work in quantum chromodynamics. But beyond his genius, Feynman was known as a very creative individual who was adventurous and sought out new experiences. He even once played bongos for a Brazilian samba band at Carnival. When Jonas Salk began his work on a polio vaccine in 1947, there were about 30,000 cases of polio each year in the United States. Over the next 8 years, he devoted his research to developing a cure, which he did in 1955. Upon discovering the vaccine, he chose not to seek a patent so that it would become available to everyone as quickly as possible. Alan Turing was a marathon runner who also broke the Nazi Enigma code in World War II and developed the foundations for modern computer science. All computers function based on the principles that he developed in the 1940s.